Welcome to the Union Federation podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network, where we discuss both Star Trek and the Orville. And we are returning to the Orville, guys. We got a fun show for you here, a nice limited episode. We'll get into more of that in a minute. But my name is Kevin. I'll be your captain here. And this is Union Federation episode 209, Orville Crew Profile, Lieutenant Alara Kitan, played by Halston Sage. And like I said, we are returning to the Orville. My name is Kevin. I'll be your captain here for the Union Federation. I'd like to, of course, welcome my crew here with me. With me, as always, is the co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network. He's my security and weapons officer. He's also the cleaner of the P Corner. Please welcome Mr. Kyle Wagner. What's up, buddy?
No. I am not cleaning the P Corner this week. I am doing this episode from my quarters because I've got to sit on my egg.
Okay, good. Well, we have to also bring in our first officer, counselor, and founder of the BQN, Amy Nelson. Welcome. How are you?
Hello. Doing great, you guys. I'm so excited to be talking Orville. It's been too long. I've loved watching these episodes. So much fun.
Yeah. It's so that's what we're doing. We're returning to Orville. And of course, the Union Federation here on the Fandom Podcast Network, also partnering up with BQN. But we are having a little limited episode series here, 10 episode limited series here. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be highlighting the main crew members and talking about each episode about each one of them. And of course, the first one that we're going to be discussing, of course, is Alara Kitan. And what we're going to do too is we're going to narrow it down to 2 episodes that you and I picked, Amy. Now, I did a full rewatch of all of the seasons, so you guys didn't have to, and I took notes, extensive notes. We had a little meeting about it, all too because we're a little excited about the possibility of maybe a 4th season that was teased by one of the cast members last year. Don't know if that's going to happen yet. Hopefully, it will. But we were like itching to get back to the Orville, right, Amy?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So we wanted to do it. Well, how are we going to do this? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight each character, the actor that played them, and we're going to dive deep into the 2 episodes that we've chosen. And so for this first one, we're going to be talking about Lieutenant Alara Kitan. The second one, we're going to be talking about Lieutenant Talakiali, followed by John Lamar, Gordon Malloy, Commander Bordis, Claire Finn, Isaac, Commander Kelly Grayson, Captain Ed Mercer, and the last one's going to be a fun one. We're going to talk about the reoccurring guest stars and some of the extra special guest stars, Star Trek Alumni. So that's going to be a lot of fun to get into that. But let's tease what we've been talking about recently on the Union Federation. If you haven't already, please check out. We talked and did our spoiler review and discussion podcast on the Star Trek movie, Star Trek Section 31. That is out on the network. Make sure you check that out. And recently, we talked about the final season 5 of Star Trek Lower Decks, the animated series. We had a lot of fun talking about that. And then previously, we had a lot of fun returning to Star Trek: The Next Generation. We had a limited 9-part series. We talked about all of the Star Trek Next Generation 2-part episodes. So yeah. So anyway, guys, we got some stuff to talk about. Let's go ahead and start our Orville shuttle mission. All right, I'm excited about this. So, okay. First character we are talking about, guys, of course, is Alara Kitan. All right, and I got some information on the web here. I'll be honest with you. Had to go to Orville Fandom Wiki. They have some great stuff for us there. But did want to tease the 2 episodes that we have chosen to discuss that highlight each of these characters. And for Alara Kitan, we chose Season 1, Episode 2, Command Performance. And then the second one we chose was Season 2, Episode 3, Home. There is an honorable mention if you want to watch these later and follow us along here. We also had an honorable mention for Season 1, Episode 10, Firestorm. But let's go ahead and mention a little what we know about from Wikipedia about Alara Kitan. Alara is a Zelayan lieutenant and former chief of security aboard USS Orville. According to Admiral Tom Halsey, she served with the Orville under the previous captain as chief of security prior to Ed Mercer assuming command. Due to the high gravity of her homeworld, Zelaya, Alara possesses incredible strength and endurance makes her one of the most effective security officers aboard the ship. She won the Sapphire Star for bravery when she led the Orville in a bold rescue of Ed and First Officer Kelly Grayson from the Caliban. Alara slowly weakened under the Orville's Earth-like gravity. She left the Union fleet and returned to her family on Zalea in September 2420. She was replaced by interim security chief Tharo. Let's go have a little discussion about Alara. Let's start with you first, Amy. We decided to choose her first, get in with the security officers. Give me your first thoughts on Alara.
She is, I think, the youngest of our bridge crew. So for her to be on the bridge, ranking officer and security chief, is truly remarkable for how much she has, advanced to be this bridge officer at such a young age. And again, I really admire she's an alien. So she had to leave like everything, her planet, her family, to work on this starship. So there's really a lot of great things about Alara that I sort of have forgotten, but came back to me.
Kyle, what about you? Your first impressions on revisiting Alara?
I think what's interesting about the character is they actually write her in a way where she's a very strong character and not just in a physical nature, but they also write her where she's just enough where this crew treats her like a little bit of a little sister, but with respect. They kind of look out for her because of her age, but they have such she earns their respect, especially in the first episode we're going to be talking about. But I think it was a very interesting character. I think the one frustrating thing about it is, of course, we know Halston left the show, and you really kind of wonder what could have come from this character if she had been through the whole thing. Because I think every episode she was the one character, but I think grew exponentially throughout her time on that they brought her up, coming from just where she could have just been the gag of the small little girl who's incredibly strong. They actually made her a lot more complex, and I think that was one of the things that the Orville did so well with a lot of its characters. I think the Orville strived with character development, and I think Alara was one of them who they did an excellent job with in a short time.
Good points there, guys. I always found Alara funny, just kind of matter of fact. She's spunky too, and every time she kind of took the spotlight, she commanded her time, I thought too. And I think Halston Sage did a good job of bringing that character to life. The Zillayans are an interesting species, and we'll learn more about that later. I just liked how she kind of mingled and mixed with the other crew members too. How she earned their respect eventually, and she had challenges too. And she had a little insecurity that I liked as well, which is nice to write into a character because we all have insecurities. And I think they did a good job showcasing her in several episodes and scenes with that as well. So, well, guys, let's go ahead and get into the Admiral's Log episode synopsis for our first episode here. And the first one is, of course, Command Performance.
All right. Well, we have the technologically advanced Caliban capture and imprison Mercer and Grayson for a new exhibit in a zoo filled with humanoid species throughout the galaxy. Alara is left in command of the Orville, as Bortus has laid an egg and must incubate it. Alara is unsure of herself, but gains confidence with Claire's mentoring. Mercer and Grayson speculate whether they could have made their relationship work, but conclude they were incompatible for a long-term romantic relationship, despite their strong camaraderie. Admiral Tucker orders Alara to return to the Orville, to return the Orville to Earth rather than approach the powerful Caliban in a rescue attempt. Alara disobeys orders and retrieves Mercer and Grayson along with a kidnapped alien child by trading an archive of Earth's 21st century reality television for them. Mercer presents Alara with a Medal of Honor, and he and Grayson are certain she will not be disciplined for disobeying a direct order. A rare female offspring hatches from Bortus's egg, stunning him and Clyden.
Kyle.
I just want to throw in the Calvian by this point, as long as they've had all that reality television, They are no longer a superior technological and advanced society.
Yeah, I'm wondering how the Caliban now think of humans after seeing all of that reality television. Oh God.
I think they were confirmed that we are a lesser intelligent species.
Definitely. Well, before we talk about the episode here, I want to showcase a little bit of Orville trivia from the episode. The first appearance of Alara's eyebrows. The initial intention was that her species lacked eyebrows, but the producers were unhappy with the look and changed their minds after Old Wounds, which was the first episode was filmed. Actress Halston Sage even shaved off her own eyebrows for the role and consequently had to have false eyebrows applied for the rest of the season. Amy, you want to read the next one there?
Yeah. So the chain of command of the Orville is established down to the fourth officer. Ed Mercer is the captain. Kelly Grayson is the first officer. Bortus is the second officer. Alara is the third officer. And Claire Finn is the fourth officer. This ties the Orville with Star Trek Next Generation in its establishment of the chain of command on a similarly themed show. TNG's chain of command, where it went Picard, Riker, Data, Worf, LaForge. No other Star Trek show has established a chain of command that far down, with many not going beyond the position of first or second officer. Uniquely to the Orville, neither the first nor second officers have any other role on the ship beyond command, while in Star Trek, only the captain and sometimes the first officer are without other duties. Spock and T'Pol, for example, both served as science officers on their respective enterprises, in addition to their role as second in command.
All right. Kyle, you want
Very
to get the next?
interesting.
Yeah. Kyle, do you want to get the next trivia there? We got a little Claire Finn action there.
Yeah. Dr. Finn gives Lieutenant Kitan advice on command for 4 seasons. Penny Johnson Gerald played Captain Cates on Castle, where she commanded detectives, and Captain Cassidy Yates on Deep Space Nine.
I didn't watch Castle, but I knew she was on it, though. Yeah.
Yes, my brother loved Castle, and now it's like on reruns, you know? So, like, if it comes on, I'd be like, hey, that's Cassidy Yates. Oh, that's Dr. Finn. I never know what to call her.
So guest stars, we had recurring guest stars. We had Jeffrey Tambor as Ben Mercer, who played, of course, the father to Captain Mercer there. Holland Taylor played Jeannie Mercer. We also had Larry Joe Campbell as Steve Newton, and Ron Canada as Admiral Tucker. So, guys, let's go ahead. Yes, Kyle.
I just want to say, too, and Ben Mercer offered the most sage advice of all. Beware of those sesame seeds.
Exactly. Let's talk a little command performance. Why is this a good Alara episode for us to dive into? Amy, I'm going to start with you.
You know, one thing that I think a lot of people can relate to is imposter syndrome. And when you are given the responsibility, at least the first, maybe the second or the third time, of taking over command or doing something that is outside of your normal, here she is thrown in. You've got the bridge. Wait, what? Wait a minute. And
she was completely surprised when she was like told to be taking control. She's like, wait, what?
Yeah, you know. And so I feel like that was so relatable. I mean, I felt that way when I became a teacher, and I'm like, who am I to be teaching these kids, you know? But it's that first little bit where I just think everyone can relate to. And she did so well in going to Bortus, going to Claire, like, someone help me. And she made mistakes. The crew ended up hating her. And, you know, she tried to play it strict. But she had to learn along the way, and she just did it with grace. And she was scared out of her mind, but she still went and did the next thing. So many people, I feel like, when they get overwhelmed, they just shut down. And it's like, no, just make the next decision. Make the next decision the right decision. And sometimes if you can just, and Claire gave great advice, but Alara eventually was able to, okay, I'm going to make this decision, then the next, and then she could figure out, all right, let's go get them. I'm going to ignore the command. It just was very relatable.
Yeah. Kyle, what about you? How is this a good Alara episode for you?
Well, because I think this is the episode that really starts, you see Alara more than just the security officer or the muscle of the ship. You kind of, that was kind of all they kind of portrayed her at in the first episode. And then you get to see this. And what I like so much about this episode, as far as her storyline went, is here is this young, very, very bright, very successful young officer, but she really hasn't had that taste of like really having to be in charge. Just she's in security, but all of a sudden she's kind of thrown because she's like, wait, what? I'm in charge here? What are you doing? And there's a lot of great little moments in this, like when she's first looking at the chair before she sits into it, and you can see almost a little bit of trepidation in her face before she sits in it. But there's another moment too that I think reflects well off of Mercer and Kelly too, is when they're having the discussion about how they had left Alara in charge with and it kind of comes across as, the idea was, oh, this is going to be a simple little thing. We'll be right back, and all of a sudden they're kidnapped, and they have that conversation about, well, she's young, but she's bright, she's smart. And so you can tell where they're like, we wouldn't have maybe made this decision if we knew this was what the circumstances were going to be, but we've got to have faith. We have faith and belief in her too. And what you see here is some, just again, great character growth from the Alara character. And, she did handle it with grace with a little help of a double shot of tequila too.
After throwing up in the hallway,
Yeah.
But the other thing is, it was a very natural reaction when she first makes the decision not to go after Ed and Kelly, because she doesn't know better than to question an admiral. She doesn't have the experience. She doesn't have that ability yet to really make a decision on her own. She's just trying to follow orders and do what she thinks is right by following those orders. And it's the other experienced members of the crew that help her realize. And I think that's what's really good there, is that we don't see her just fighting everybody. She's actually absorbs what's being told to her, and then goes with her gut and what feels right to her, instead of just following the line, which, and I think it was Malloy who said it best. If it was you, Ed would have come for you.
Yeah.
And I think that was really the turning point. And just to side note, Claire Finn in this episode, we really get to see where she is the kind of conscious and soul of the ship, and where everybody just believes in her and trusts what she has to say, and how she is basically the Obi-Wan of I think the entire crew.
And she says that.
Yeah. I'll be your Obi-Wan.
Yeah. So I wanted to, before I forget, Kyle, when you were talking about Claire Finn, and she and Alara goes to her, asking for advice and stuff. There's a very subtle scene where Alara finally takes the command, and she's going to go rescue, the captain, the first officer, and she's laying out the orders, to the rest of the crew on the bridge. And you see Finn just kind of standing there watching her, like, okay, she's doing good here. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but it's a very subtle scene I like about that. Okay, so I want to talk about the scene. I like that when Malloy calls her out and basically says, "You suck," I think, and she says, "You're relieved of duty," and he leaves. And then she comes to the mess hall, and everyone's looking at her, and she sits down, and she allows Malloy to speak freely. And that's when he says, that they would come after you. And she makes that moment. But that was a really good moment there to, like, she's like, okay, I'm not going to listen to the Admiral advice here. I'm going to go after them, and Malloy had a nice moment in there saying, how he, that they would do the same for you, and getting the whole crew together and to go ahead to this mission and try to rescue them. One thing I did notice though about this episode, guys, and we're going to be watching an episode next week for our next character, for Lieutenant Talakiali. I know it's happened twice because I've just recently watched them, including one of these two episodes. at least twice, and maybe more, but at least twice, an admiral has basically said, not so many words, it's too late. We can't get them for whatever reason. We got to presume and leave them alone, presume that they're dead. And that happens in this episode. But what's so funny about the two episodes, it's not Admiral Halsey. So, we have this term in Star Trek where we call, there's admirals in, Deep Space Nine kind of really started the badmirals, and we end up finding that we have a badmiral later on in season 3. But it's not that they're badmirals, they're just kind of like, they're having to be dicks about it, basically. But I find it funny that it was not Halsey that gave the orders. It was some other admiral that did it, though. So, yeah. And speaking of Halsey, I think we have the next segment here, Admiral's Log episode for the second episode here. And Amy, if you can go ahead, this is for Home. This is season 2, episode 3.
So when Isaac breaks Alara's forearm during an arm wrestling challenge, silly, Alara discovers her body is slowly losing its superhuman strength as it adapts to Earth's gravity. At Dr. Finn's recommendation, Alara returns to her home planet Zalea to reacclimate. While convalescing at her parents' house, old familial conflicts resurface, prompting a family visit to their island vacation home to reconnect. Things go awry when fellow vacationers Cambus Boren and his wife arrive, seeking revenge against Alara's scientific father, Ildis, whom they blame for their son's suicide. Alara has regained enough strength to subdue the intruders, saving her parents and sister. Meanwhile, Dr. Finn develops a treatment for Alara to maintain her physical strength. Alara chooses to stay on Zalea to bond with her family and bids the Orville crew a heartfelt farewell. Mercer says she is always welcome to return.
There we go. All right, and the jar of pickles is left for Mercer. Nice scene there. Got some trivia here, guys. I'll go ahead and lead off here. So the first bit of trivia we got for this episode is the house of Lieutenant Kitan's parents is the same filming location as the parental house of Johnny Rico in the movie Starship Troopers, 1997. Incidentally, both sets of parents disagree with their child's choice to join the Galactic Fleet.
It ended so much better for Alara's parents than it did for Johnny Rico's.
This is true. This is true. Did you ever see Starship Troopers, Amy?
Maybe. I don't remember anything about it, but it sounds like I would have seen it.
Yeah. So, all right, Amy, you want to get the next bit of trivia here? This is fun.
Yeah. So Ildis tells Captain Mercer they've far superior doctors on the planet than on the Union ship. Likely a nod to the fact that guest stars Robert Picardo and John Billingsley both played doctors on past Star Trek shows. Obviously, Picardo on Star Trek Voyager and Billingsley on Star Trek Enterprise.
There we go. All right, Kyle, get us the last one there.
Yeah, the home planet Zalea is pronounced exactly like this name of the place where Spock undergoes Faltor Pan, the refusion at the end of Star Trek III, The Search for Spock in 1984, Mount Zalea.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Different spelling.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we also had some notable guest stars, as we mentioned. We have Molly Hagan. Kyle, isn't Molly Hagan one of the actors that was in that TV show Herman's Head? I feel like she was like the female in his head.
She might have been. I mean, I always think of Nancy Cartwright in that show, but I think she was the female in his head. I'm looking at her IMDb right now to see if we can confirm that.
Please do, because I just came to my mind there. We had Candace King as
she was Angel. She was Sensitivity.
That's right. She was Sensitivity. That's right. There you go. Of course, Robert Picardo, John Billingsley. We have a nice little Star Trek reunion there. Carrie O'Malley played Florada. And we also had, I love this too, had a little Star Trek reunion here. We had Patrick Warburton as Lieutenant Tharl with the extra esophagus trunk. And then we had Jason Alexander, who played Alex. He was the one that was heading, he's the one with the big horn on his head, and he was heading up the competition for the betting for the arm wrestling.
Oh, that's where he was. I'm like, I know Jason Alexander was in it, but yeah, some Seinfeld alum.
Now, Kyle, you know Isaac didn't just win because Alara's bone density was weak. He won because he turned his baseball cap backwards.
Yeah. Well, there was that, or was the motor oil he drank right before he did the arm wrestling.
That was a reference to what movie, Kyle?
The classic Sylvester Stallone 80s arm wrestling film, Over the Top.
Over the Top. There you go.
Winner takes it all, man. Winner takes it all.
That's why we had to explain it to Amy, because we knew that she wouldn't get it. So
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about this episode. Amy, let's start with you. Why is this a good Alara episode?
Oh my gosh, why is this not? I mean, this is definitely an episode about her. Because we're on her planet. Like, we're hardly on the Orville. And I just love, because it happens to the majority, it happens to me. I go home and just you revert back and you have all the same issues of when you left. And it's like, why can't people mature? Why can't we move on? And so she has to learn a way to deal with not only her physical ailments that are, she's having to deal with, but then with her parents' judgment, her sister's judgment, and it's a lot to take on, and she does it so well. I think she sort of like goes inside herself a little bit more, but thankfully we get a little distraction of what's this light over there? There's no one on the island, and so that is able to distract, and I think it was because of that she's able to get down to the core of, my family are really important. And when it comes to life or death, I'm going to risk my life for them. I have the know-how. They don't know. And thankfully, they reciprocated and was like, tell us what to do. We will do whatever you need. And so that trust in her skills and ability trumped what they thought about her joining the union federation union.
It's the union.
Yeah. So it's definitely multifaceted. And Kyle, when you say like her character growth, I think a lot happens here for her personally.
Yeah. Kyle, what about you? Why is this a good Alara episode?
Well, for a few things, I want to kind of what Amy was talking about with the parents, because let's be honest, we all go back home and visit our parents, and our parents, we love them, but they go back to seeing us as their child. And sometimes they can't help themselves, and that's how they treat us. And that's very much what this episode does. Plus, she's going back being sick, so there's an overprotectiveness of this. But what really makes this episode work, and it makes it such a strong episode for Alara, she's using her brain. She's not using her physical attributes. She's using her brain. And she's showing, because she's bound to this wheelchair for most of the episode, how smart she truly is. And we see that. We're not seeing her rely on her strength. We're not seeing her. She's using her brains and her training to solve what's going on and be observant of what's around her. So we don't just see this strong character. We see this character who has grown and matured from the season 1 to this, which turns out to be what was her final episode on the show until the finale, where she made a guest appearance on the finale. But we really see that character growth to the point where she makes a very big life-changing decision at the end of the episode to leave the Orville, because she's found something for the first time that she didn't realize she had, and maybe her own family didn't realize what she was, and now they have an understanding of each other because of what a traumatizing situation bringing them together and really opening their eyes to each other. That moment between Robert Picardo and her after she saves them and how he's reacting is such, with the over emotion of what he didn't see in his daughter and the guilt he was feeling about it, and that she forgives him basically for that, is such a powerful moment. And it really does, as much as you hate seeing her leave the show, the way the story unfolds is she's doing the right thing. She, instead of just leaving this, like we've healed and stuff like that, she is staying home to be with her family and to get those bonds even stronger. And what's even better about it is how the crew of the Orville even understands that and respects her decision. And, you know, to have that great little moment at the end where she gives a gift, and when Mercer goes in after she's left and he opens it and it's the jar of pickles, of course, with the joke always being he'd always ask her, hey, can you open this jar of pickles for me?
Yeah.
It's just a great little moment, but it's such a moment to where you have this character who's grown and then just takes this, in this one episode, takes this whole additional maturing leap in this episode. And you have so much respect for this character as she's exiting the show that it really solidifies the aspect of, you wish this character was staying more so you can see what's going on, but you also understand it. And I think it was a brilliant and beautiful way to write a character off of a show.
Well said, Kyle. Halston Sage, you could tell, is a really good actor, and she just nails it in this episode. All the emotional chords as well, and just little things like, you know, when when their family goes to their vacation home, and they get the people that come to saying, hey, you know, we're staying at the house down here and someone broke into it, and you know, we find out why they're there, but she's like immediately going into security mode and asking them like all the questions. But when you see, like, before they do that, then you see her at the dinner table with her parents, and her sister comes, and you can tell her parents are more approving of her sister. She's getting married, she's engaged, and they just still, especially the father, just can't stand that she's, you know, in Starfleet, I was going to say, but, you know, in Orville doing kind of like a military type job, and is never approved of that. And it sets up the tension to where when their lives are threatened, and you said it really well, Kyle, that the father then realizes what she can do and what it means. And I thought it was a really good, I loved how they had a very serious moment showing how strong the gravity is on Zalea, especially when you see Mercer in the spacesuit, and you see his legs start to collapse, you know, as he's being brought on board the shuttle where he would be safe. You know, and then they had a little comedic moment where Malloy throws out an empty beer can and just goes plop, you know, little things like that. But I like the fact that her father and her parents finally kind of understand what she's about, but yet she still makes the decision to come back home and spend time with the family and do some things that she wants to do. And, you know, I really missed Halston, and I thought the ending of the episode was very sweet. I teared up a little bit when she walks out to the shuttle bay, and then all of a sudden everyone slowly comes walking out, and it was a very, very nice moment. And then, as you alluded to, Kyle, the jar of pickle scene that was very, very cool. So yeah, Amy.
Yeah, just one other thing, Kyle, you brought to memory, like when she realized, man, I'm not this strong anymore, and she went to Captain Mercer and was like, man, I can't do this job. Like, that's why you hired me, right? Because I am the strength, I am the muscle, and if I don't have that, then I don't have my job. And it was that one thought that was wrong, because Mercer's like, no, I hired you. You know, you've got the job because you're smart, you're intelligent, you're good with people, like all these things. And so I think that gave her another depth to her character where she's like, oh, I am a valuable crew member more than this thing that I really can't control, you know? And
Yeah.
so to get that self-worth for her actual thoughts, and, you know, I thought was a really good development that we saw in this episode.
That's an excellent point. So now we did, before we continue the discussion on Alara here, we did want to mention that there is an honorable mention episode that if you want to check out, and this is Firestorm. Firestorm was season 1, episode 10. And the brief synopsis on that one is Alara questions whether she's fit for her job when a fire breaks out on the Orville and a crew member dies. When Lieutenant Payne is trapped beneath debris during a plasma storm, Alara's pyrophobia causes her to hesitate, resulting in his death. Blaming herself, she tenders her resignation, which Mercer declines. She suggests that she discover the source of her fear. And this is where you start to see stuff happens, and you see other crew members' fears, and you see the creepy clown, you see spiders and stuff like that. But also you get to see Alara's parents first show up in this, and I believe it's Robert Picardo, the father, that refers to humans as the hillbillies of the Union or something funny. There was a funny line with that though. But that is an honorable mention for episode if you guys want to check that out. So, well, let's go ahead and get into the next Orville shuttle mission here, guys. We want to talk a little bit about Halston Sage herself here. I got a little bit of trivia about her. I thought this was really cool. She is obsessed with 80s movies. I love that. Obsessed with 80s movies. I would love to find out like which ones are her favorites. Because Kyle, I don't know if you know this or not, but we kind of specialize in 80s films here on the network.
we do. Are you sure with those time warps that keep popping up around? I thought we were in the 90s.
Oh, well, we are now, but maybe she's been listening to us, so who knows? She is the first actress to play the Marvel Comics character Dazzler in a live action adaptation. Was
X-Men? It was X-Men Dark Phoenix. This is why nobody remembers it.
That's right. That was the one I didn't see.
Yeah, it was a very brief cameo.
Halston graduated from New York University, NYU, and Halston is of Cuban American descent. Yes, Kyle.
I'd like to take the opportunity too, because there's a great show she did that if you're a fan of Halston Sage, you need to watch. It lasted for 2 seasons. It's actually the show she did after she left the Orville. So it's a show.
Did she leave the Orville to do that series? Do you know?
There's a lot of conflicting reports, and I don't want to get into that, but I think the opportunity on this series, because she was a co-lead on that series.
Gotcha.
And that series I'm talking about is called Prodigal Son. And
Prodigal Son?
I want to just give the quick IMDb synopsis.
Please.
Because it also stars Tom Paine from The Walking Dead. He played Jesus on The Walking Dead.
Yeah, I remember him, yeah.
So Tom Paine plays Malcolm Bright, a former FBI profiler, and he is the son of a serial killer and suspects that he himself might become a sociopath. He solves crimes for the NYPD as a form of absolution for his upbringing. Halston Sage plays his sister on this show, and she has some interesting storylines in this. But here's a couple of things. Kevin, Lou Diamond Phillips is in the show.
Okay.
And the father of these 2 kids, who was the serial killer, is played by the wonderful Michael Sheen.
Really?
Underworld, and of course married to, at one point, the amazing Kate Beckinsale. This is
married to my movie wife, Kate Beckinsale. Yeah.
This is a Fox. This was a Fox show. It aired for 2 seasons. It got kind of killed by the writer's strike and COVID restrictions, but you can find this show on Hulu. I would strongly suggest checking it out.
You've seen it, obviously, right?
Oh, I love this show. I watched.
Okay.
I'm
assuming Halston was good in it.
Oh, she was very good in it, and takes some very dark turns in it. But you really see her in a different way. It's a totally different character than what she was with Alara Kitan, and you really see her acting, her stretching her acting, and it was a great role for her. A very intriguing show, and very well done. It's a shame it got foxed, basically, but if you can find it, I believe it's still streaming on Hulu. I don't know that 100%, but if you can find it, definitely check it out if you're a fan of Halston Sage.
So Halston leaves in this episode, the home one, but she actually returns in 2 episodes. The alternate future one with we see the alternate version of what happened with Kelly. She returns after the Kaylon have destroyed most of Earth and everything, and she's like helping lead that resistance thing. And then she returns for the final episode when we see Finn and Isaac, Dr. Finn and Isaac get married. So it was nice that she came back for those episodes. So with all of that in mind, what we've talked about and throughout saying, I want to start off with our first question here is how their character moments tie into the Orville universe as whole. Amy, start with you.
Yeah, I think definitely her character brings so much to the universe. Obviously, her alien species, her planet Zalea. We come across other Zaleans in our series, so she's not the only one. Her incredible strength. So yeah, it's sort of world building by having her on there. I think that's sort of any others. Let's go around.
Okay, Kyle. Kyle, what about you?
Oh, I think with her character on the show, it was interesting because the one thing that was so great about the Orville is there's a character on the show that everybody can identify with. And I think she was the character for a lot of the younger viewers of the Orville to kind of identify with and latch onto because they could see her struggles being so young, but being this in position high enough, and her trying to grow and mature while still being in this very high position on a ship and being part of that crew. And I think they really did a great job with how they played out that character again, who could have easily been a one note character without any question, just based off of her
Mhm.
strength. And again, that goes to all the credit to Seth MacFarlane and the writers of the show to how they handled that character. And I think, and I know we'll talk about this more when we get to Kiali's episode, but I think really the stark contrast between Kiali and Alara is also makes you really appreciate the character more. Where you had Kiali, who was more experienced when a more experienced security chief than even Alara was, where Alara was kind of on this like prodigal fast track, and you have Kiali who has more experience, and you really can see when you watch this when the episodes where you have Kiali compared to Alara, the difference in the characters, but how both characters are still so incredibly strong in their own ways. And I really think that's a compliment to both actresses, and it really lets you see both those characters in a totally different light. To whereas if Halston had maybe stayed with the show, we don't
Right.
necessarily get that view of Alara looking back on it and having something to contrast it against.
It's interesting too, regarding the Orville universe as a whole. I'm more curious about the relationship that Zalea and the Union have and how they're allies. Because one of the things I really loved about the home episode that we see is, and you see the look on and the wow that you see from Mercer and Malloy about how beautiful the city is that they arrive. And if you go back and watch that, got to give credit to the special effects people that came with this beautiful cityscape. And then they kind of go into the suburbs a little bit, and then you see a really cool fly through a little valley and everything. But it's mentioned that Alara gets fast tracked through Union because she's Zelayan and that she's so young and that they do have the strength, which just does help them. And so I would be kind of curious to learn more about that. But that's something that was said and done. And because she's so long, she got so young, she got fast tracked. But even though she's so young, she's got a good head on her shoulder.
Mhm.
She's really smart. I feel like people really respected her, and especially Mercer did as well. And I liked her I guess camaraderie with the rest of the crew, which goes into the next question I want to ask you guys
Mhm.
here is their relationship to the rest of the Orville crew. I want to have that discussion here. And the first thing that comes to mind is when she's like trying to do the dating scene and she has the date with Lieutenant Dan, the guy with the big head. Very, very funny moment. It always kind of comes up, and I guess she's had some dating issues because she's so strong. And I think she had mentioned in one of the episodes where a lot of men find that intimidating. But just some moments with that she has with the crew, I do remember over her time that were a lot of fun, and I want to kind of go back to that. Go to that, Amy. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, two standouts are her and Grayson. Like
Yeah,
their friendship and support of each other. I know sometimes they get a little, talking about partners, and we know there's more to life than dating, and they both, talk about it. But and then the second one is Dr. Finn and their relationship. Like when she was becoming captain, or taking control and command performance, man, Dr. Finn was there for her. And even though with that age difference, like I can sometimes like talk to like first year teachers, and here I am in my 50s and they're like in their 20s, and it's like, yeah, don't talk patronizing. And Dr. Finn didn't. She was like, straight up, this is what it is. Yes, you are young, but you are in a position where you need to get your act together. So pull yourself up and let's go. So there's this mutual respect, but yet kindness and loveliness between her and Dr. Finn, and then her and Amanda Grayson, for sure.
Kyle, give us your take on the relationship with the rest of the crew, Orville crew members.
It's interesting because what I think they really did here, outside of Dr. Finn, who seemed like a kind of a motherly guidance to her and the wise guys, I always felt like, again, that they did a very good job of with the main crew. She was the sister they all looked out for, even though she could kick all their butts except maybe for Isaac. But Mercer always felt like more of a big brother to her than a father figure. And I like that they did that aspect of it. Kelly was the big sister, and then you had, they all kind of looked out for her, but they gave her a hard, we give her a hard time at times because of her age, but you saw as it developed on the respect they had for her too.
Yeah.
And I think that really was, again, with the Star Trek influences the Orville had, the family that the crew is. So when that final scene hits and she walks out there and there's nobody out there, and then they all either come out of the shuttlecraft or from back behind it, and you see that, and you see it's just like that huge smile on my face, like there's my family. Just as much as I'm going to go back and rediscover my actual blood family, these people are just as much, if not more, my family. And I think that's the thing they did with her character, especially so well, was she was the one that I think kind of related to everybody, had some relationships with everybody. I mean, yes, she was trying to date on the crew, and you're on it. I think it was kind of a fun thing because you're on a starship. You don't have a ton of options available to you, but yet you had all these guys who, even though, like I said, everybody all along there, she could physically handle herself, but they were still protective of her mentally because of her age.
Yeah, what's funny is I even like the moments with her and Isaac, especially we get obviously they're friends enough to do these friendly wagers on the arm wrestling championship. But then like when the first one we talked about, Command Performance, when they have to go to the Caliban, and she's playing, she portrays his pet, and she goes woof, but and Isaac convinces the Caliban to listen to her and to and then they of course work on the trade and stuff like that. But she has some wonderful moments with the rest of the crew, and Halston is just wonderful. I'm sure she was wonderful to work with as well. So okay, last thing I want to ask about is a professional and personal development. As we get from the beginning of the series, we learn how strong she is. We learn how young she is. She's a little naive, but she still knows her stuff. It was nice to kind of see her go through the motions and go through learning about the stuff that she struggled with, her insecurities, why she struggled with not helping that one crew member right away that in that fiery situation, and Lieutenant Payne passes away. And then we learn later that her mom says it was because of this childhood trauma that she had, and she had to face that. And dealing with difficult parents that disapprove of what you're doing is another thing, another character development thing that I like. But I also feel too, along with the crew, as long as she was, in a lot of the episodes that she was in, I think there's a good camaraderie that was developing. And I was kind of sad to see her go as soon as she did, to be honest with you guys, because, when I look back at first season of was it The Next Generation, and remind me, Amy, when we had Yar die, it was towards the end of the season, right? We got to know her a little bit. She had a little relationship with Data as well, but I feel like we had more time with Yar, where when she died, it was sad, and they had a good episode about that. But I really kind of wished that we had more development of her than we did get. What are your thoughts on her professional and personal development as well, Amy?
For Alara?
Yeah.
Yeah. For the short amount of time that we had her, she really did develop a lot. And I thought that she was similar to Tasha Yar, that we, lost her in the first season. So I was trying to find, the second episode home that I was supposed to watch. And it's not in season 1. Where is this? And so she made it through season 2, which I found interesting, and so glad that we got it, because we get this home episode for her. What I love, especially with the Orville and with Star Trek, and there's a couple other shows, but how they handle adversity is so spot on. Like, you mess up, but then you do better. And they're giving us examples on how when we have self doubt, when we have imposter syndrome, when we don't know our strengths, yeah, just as Alara didn't, that we can overcome them, because look at how much she grew with the support of her crew around her. And I think that's what's important, is that you've got to surround yourself. If it's not your family, then get your crew to surround yourself so that you can be built up and that you can have this amazing development in your career or in your personal life. I just feel like she was so relatable and stumbled, but then did the right things to progress. And chef's kiss for her character on that.
Yeah, I did misspoke. We didn't lose her in the first season. We lost of Tasha Yar in the first season, but
Yeah.
it wasn't until the second season that she ended up leaving the show. But when you look at the episodes, it feels like it wasn't like 2 seasons or
Yeah.
a season and a half that we lost her, because in season 1 of TNG, Tasha Yar, there was 26 if you count the 2-part episode for Farscape. But Tasha left in episode 22, I think it is, the Skin of Evil episode. So we had a lot more with her, as opposed to you get like 10 or 12 episodes of the Orville, and they don't always highlight her. But man, I would have loved to have seen more. Kyle, your thoughts?
Well, I think talking about this brings up a point that I want to make in the Orville itself and in the writing of the Orville. I don't think there's maybe a better show right now that wrote better with these shorter season formats that we're getting now than the Orville. Because you talk about with Tasha Yar, we had 26 episodes with Tasha Yar to feel that attachment to that character. Yet we barely had 13 episodes with Alara, yet we still felt that kind of attachment to that character. And I think that shows you, it's one of the few shows I think that in today's world where we have these shorter seasons, how good the writing on the Orville was, and they understood what they needed to do with the characters in that shorter amount of time and how well they executed it. And that's kudos to the writers on the Orville and the performances as well, because when you have that shorter time, you have to make the most of your time on screen. And they all did. I mean, across the board, they all did it. But here you have, like I said, a character who was basically 13 episodes, left the show, and had this impactful leaving episode, and had people wanting to see this character back before the show ended, or at least went on what right now we're going to call an extended hiatus.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it was really nice to see her come back, especially in that alternate universe episode. I'm forgetting it right now, but it was nice, and then to see her at the very end of season 3 too. It was like, yes, you're not on the show anymore, but your character's welcome back anytime, and they found room to bring her back, and I thought that was really, really sweet. So, well, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. This is, of course, the Orville episode, Union Federation episode 209, talking about, of course, the Orville crew profile, Lieutenant Alara Kitan, played by Halston Sage. Let's go ahead and get our final thoughts. All right. This has been fun, guys. And Amy, when we were talking about kind of like the order that we wanted to do, we were like, let's go ahead and talk about the security people here. We got 2 wonderful actresses playing the security officers in this. And so we decided to start off with Alara here. And this was a fun one to do. Give me your final thoughts on Alara here.
One thing that I do need to credit the crew with is following this young person's orders, especially in, command performance.
Yeah.
Because it's not difficult when you are young and you are leading people who are older than you. And she stepped up to the plate, although hesitantly, but I mean, who wouldn't? It's your first. Her character is so relatable to her personal, of where does she fit in with her family. She's the black sheep. She's the one who left the planet and left her family. She's the one that's doing her own thing. And then we get like her professional of, yep, oh, I'm in command and I need to lead these people. Like we get so much from her, and the feelings of that imposter that I talked about was so, for me, just like so important. And Halston does a great job. I was so at the end of Home when Mercer kept saying, you come back, come back, come back. And I'm like, yeah, come back, come back. So that was a very beautiful ending in Home for her character. And very grateful to have her on the Union Starship.
I like that you said that. I also kind of feel that when that scene was happening, you're always welcome back. Your post is here. I kind of feel that was Seth MacFarlane saying that to Halston as well. So yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle, give me your final thoughts on Alara Kitan, played by Halston Sage.
The fact that we just spent an hour podcast talking about one character who was on 13 episodes of a show that ran 3 seasons should tell you the impact that character had and how well that character was executed. And with the character of Alara Kitan, it was again a character that I think a lot of viewers could identify with because we've been there. We've been that young person who maybe gets thrown into the deep end sooner than we expect, and we have to grow with it. And I think for a lot of us, being able to have that character that we can grow with, and again, that several over characters grew throughout this series. But you have again a character, and I've said it more than once on this podcast. You had a character who so easily could have been a one note character, and they could have just played up on the strength thing and made it running jokes. And just like the Orville itself, where we thought it was going to be just this kind of parody show, it's not. It is it's quality. It was a quality show with quality writing and quality acting, and to start these profile episodes off with this character who wasn't even all 3 seasons, but still have such a strong feelings about this character and be able to talk about this character in depth like we have. It goes credit to the writers. It goes credit to Halston Sage for how she performed the character, and it's a credit to a show that has a great diehard following that is, I feel, still a little bit underrated. And I'm hoping maybe with these episodes we can get the word out about the show a little bit more and get more people involved in it, and hopefully we do get this season 4. Seth, I know you're out there listening. We want season 4, and we want it now. Damn it!
Agree completely. So hopefully, let's get an update on that. That would be nice. Yeah, one thing that really rings true with the Orville is how well they created these unique characters with backstories and the relationship between the crew members with them and the problems they may have and some of them flirting with each other as well and then facing death with each other. It's one of those things, and what I love about Halston Sage's performance is that you see her development through the episodes that she was in, and she came back and portrayed the character. I would love to see her return in some way. It would be really, really nice, and maybe get, like I said, I want to see more with Zalea, because we got, another character that's from there that we're going to discuss next. And I would just love to see more of that. And, I feel like even though it's been a while since these actors have performed these characters, since season 3's ended, I feel like, there's a bond there, and hopefully that we'll see more of that in the future. Please, come on, let's get more. All right, guys, let's go ahead and tease the next episode and get into our subspace signals. So the next episode, guys, is episode 210 for Union Federation. We're going to be talking about Lieutenant Tala Kiali, the replacement for Halston Sage character, played by Jessica Zor. We've got some fun stuff and some episodes there that we are going to discuss. And if you guys want to follow along with us, the 2 episodes that we have chosen was the episode that Lieutenant Tala Kiali came in on, and that's season 2, episode 5, All the World is a Birthday Cake. She was key to finding out how to deal with that very horrible problem that people had with astrological signs, and also to she had kind of a little love story here in the next episode that we recommend that we're going to talk about is season 2, episode 7, Deflectors. So yeah, the ship's deflectors upgrade leads to a conflict between the Moclan culture and the crew. So make sure you guys join us next time for that episode. Looking forward to it. Again, this is the Fandom Podcast Network and the BQN. Amy, tell us what's going on with the BQN, and tell us how we can find you and find BQN.
Well, you will definitely want to check us out on the BQN. Our Trexperts quiz is going strong. Bargain Bin Gamer covers games, playing games, computer games, and video games. We are getting ready for our season 3 of the View Screen, which is our Sunday morning talk show, Trek inspired morning show. That's going to be starting February 16th. We are still, you can find me, listen to me on All Good Things, and then on the View Screen. You can find me on Blue Sky, really is where I'm at Counselor Amy. I do have a BQN Discord. I'm really getting away from Meta products. So Facebook and Instagram are I'm not there too much. So please find me on Blue Sky, and you can find the network on Blue Sky, the BQN network at BQN Podcasts, which I sort of run as well. So you can find me there too.
Gotcha. Kyle, where can we find you?
Well, when I'm not sitting trying to hatch an egg, you can find me on Facebook, of course, on all of the great pages for the Fandom Podcast Network. You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW. You can find me on Blue Sky also at AKyleW. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at AKyleFandom. And guys, something might be hatching here. It's probably a girl.
Well, speaking of the Fandom Podcast Network and Union Federation, of course, you can find us, Union Federation, on X and Instagram. You can find the Fandom Podcast master feed for all of our audio podcasts at fpnet.podbean.com. Fandom Podcast Network is also on Blue Sky. And also, please check out our Union Federation podcast Facebook group where we talk all things Star Trek and the Orville. My name is Kevin. You can find me on X, Instagram, Threads, Discord, and Letterboxd at Spartan Phoenix, and also on Blue Sky at Spartan Phoenix. Also, too, give us a little shout out on TeePublic if you're looking for some new shirts. They have sales all the time. And if you search Union Federation or Fandom Podcast Net, you can get your own Union Federation podcast T-shirt, including this red shirt one here that we have showing on the slideshow here. So yeah, get some cool stuff and getting hats and sweatshirts and cups and all of our logos here. So Amy, thank you so much for helping me with this and coming up with this idea. This has been a lot of fun. Looking forward to the next episodes.
Yes.
Kyle, thank you as always, sir. Appreciate you. Hopefully that egg won't hurt too much.
Yeah, no, it's all good. And I've saved the pea corner for you, Kevin. So it's all yours.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kyle. Until next time on the Union Federation podcast, live long and prosper. And without a doubt, we are the weirdest ship in the fleet. We'll see you next time, guys.